You want to know a surefire way of losing those extra pounds that you've been putting on over the years? You want to know a surefire way of losing the weight and keeping it off? Stick around. I'll go through the whole process of how we have taken over 5,000 people and gotten their lives back, gotten their best bodies back. That's what people are looking for. They want to feel like themselves again. And I'm sure you're the same. So if that is the case, listen to this. Firstly, we obviously know that sugar is a problem. As most people know that when it comes to weight loss, you've got to cut out the sugar. But what does that mean? Does that mean you're not putting sugar in your coffee anymore? You're not eating donuts or cake anymore? Does that mean that? Well, it does, because that is sucrose. That's a type of sugar. But fruit also has sugar. It has something called fructose, and it's actually a very destructive sugar that messes up your liver, and it can actually give you a kind of alcoholic type of liver. The other thing that you've got to look at is things that turn to sugar when you eat them. So these are carbohydrates, and particularly refined carbohydrates or processed carbohydrates. So what turns to sugar in your body? Things like rice, things like oats, things like any kind of grain, bread. All of these things turn to glucose when you eat them. The same sugar that sugar turns into when you eat it. It's the same sugar. And when you have too much sugar in your blood, your insulin has to try and deal with it to save your life, because you're only meant to have 1 teaspoon of glucose in your bloodstream at any given time. So let's say you go out for a night out with your girlfriend or boyfriend and you have a pizza. That base of that pizza will probably put 20 teaspoons of sugar into your system. Then you drink a Coke with that, and that's going to put another 25 teaspoons of sugar into your system. And then you go and have an ice cream at an ice cream parlor after that. And next minute, you've got 50, 60, 70 teaspoons of sugar in your bloodstream. You're meant to have 1. So the pancreas, which creates insulin, it's an organ in the body, goes, holy moly, we better save this guy's life, and start pumping insulin into the system. And it binds to the glucose, and it tries to drive some of it into the cell, which it does. The rest of it takes and it stores it as fat for another day. So now, every time you eat something that raises glucose levels, insulin stores it as fat. So that's how a person gets fatter and fatter as they get older. And eventually, what happens is when you're having too much glucose and too much insulin, your cells become insulin resistant, which means they don't get the chance to drive those nutrients into the cell anymore. So everything turns to fat, and the person starts to become diabetic. Diabetic means there's been a process of glycation happening in your body, which means it's sugar-coated your red blood cells, it's sugar-coated your liver, it's sugar-coated everything in your body, and everything's just this gooey, gummy mess, and nothing functions properly. That's diabetes. So then what happens is the doctor will put you on some kind of a drug like metformin, and you continue to eat the stuff, and your health just continues to deteriorate, and eventually you get something called neuropathy, which is where the blood flow to your feet and even your hands starts to reduce and eventually stop completely, and your feet start rotting, and they chop your feet off below the knee. So that's what happens when you're eating things that turn to sugar, is you will not lose weight. When insulin levels are high, you will never, ever lose weight. So that's the first thing. The second thing is people always make the mistake of eating too much protein, especially these protein shakes like whey protein. Whey protein spikes blood glucose so much that you may as well not even be trying to lose weight if you're on whey protein. So generally when people start losing weight, they want to go to the gym. Fine. Absolutely go to the gym or start running or riding a bicycle or whatever. But leave all those protein shakes out of it. You don't need those protein shakes. What you need is good, grass-fed, grass-finished red meat. You will get more protein and more goodness from that than any protein shake. The other thing as well is you don't need more than the size of the palm of your hand in protein on your plate. Your liver cannot process more than that. So it's a waste of meat, and also what it does is it turns it to glucose. And then insulin rises and it stores it as fat. So eating too much protein can also stop you from losing weight. People also think, well, I'm going to eat healthy, so I'm going to eat a lot of nuts. They're very fatty, and they contain certain kinds of chemicals that will stop you from losing weight. On our program, we have found when the weight loss stops, it's usually because of too much protein or the person is starting to eat nuts. Also, things like honey. Yeah, it's definitely got stuff in it that is healthy, and it's known to be kind of a health food, but it's sugar and it will raise glucose and raise insulin. All right, the next thing you've got to do is you've got to eat cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables are your dark leafy greens, kind of like your broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. Spinach, not so much because it contains high oxalates, but you can if you're not prone to kidney stones or something like that. But don't eat root vegetables, especially not potatoes. Root vegetables are very starchy and they're very low in fiber. One thing that happens when people eat vegetables, if they're not used to it, they can be intolerant to fiber, to digesting fiber. And that you'll know this immediately because you'll start to bloat when you eat vegetables. You'll get cramps and you'll feel like you're all bloated. And that's an intolerance to fiber. If you're intolerant to digesting fiber, you will also not lose weight because vegetables actually contain carbohydrates, good carbohydrates, but they contain carbohydrates. And the fiber offsets those carbohydrates. So the way you work it out is you go, all right, so it's got 10 grams of carbohydrates, but it's got 8 grams of fiber. So there's only 2 grams of net carbohydrates. That's all you've got to worry about. If you're trying to lose weight, keep your net carbohydrates below 20 grams per day and you'll be losing weight. Is labels. Don't believe the labels. Don't go and buy a keto-friendly snack. They're not keto-friendly. They're not health-friendly, that's for sure. Make sure you eat from your table and get your food from a farmer's market. Don't get it in a box or something prepackaged with a whole long list of labels. If that label contains 10 or 20 ingredients on it, put it back on the shelf. Also, when you're shopping in a supermarket or a grocery store, go to the edges of the grocery store. That's where the health food is. In the middle, all the bright colored packaging, not good for you. Coffee is another thing that you've got to cut down. Coffee gets to work on the liver and it really stops you from losing weight if you drink too much of it. Alcohol, absolutely. Get rid of it. If you can, get rid of alcohol. That will stop you from losing weight. That'll stop you from losing weight for 2 to 3 days. So you're wasting your time if you're a regular drinker trying to lose weight. All right. So if you just follow those basic principles, you will be able to lose weight. And you just keep losing weight. One last thing. When you're doing this, you're going to shed water. So when you're eating carbohydrates or sugar, water follows it. You become waterlogged. You become like you retain water. I'm sure you all feel that if you're overweight. When you stop eating carbohydrates, that water leaves the body, which is a good thing because you're only left with the necessary water in your body. But it also leaves with the electrolytes. So make sure you get a good electrolyte drink. You can check out our other video on electrolytes to know exactly what electrolytes do and how much you're supposed to be taking in a day. All right. See you in the next video. Please subscribe and follow us on all our socials.